What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing this week? Thank you for tuning in to episode 43 of Who Gives a Dram. I am your host, Connor Gilbert, and if you're a new listener, you guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for checking out the podcast. I hope you like it. And if you're a returning listener, you know what it is. You know what's about to happen. Let's get into a whiskey review. But before we get into the whiskey review, let's get into the whiskey review. But before we get into the whiskey review, I have a few things I gotta say. First of all, if you guys like the podcast, actually no, even if you guys don't like the podcast, what I want you to do if you're listening is to go on iTunes and either leave a good rating or a bad rating and a good review or a bad review. That's my call to action for those that are listening to this podcast this week. Just simply go on, leave a rating, whether it's 5 stars, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't care. Just leave one and leave a review for me. Say, Connor, your podcast sucks, man.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Or say, Connor, dude, you got the best whiskey podcast on the market. If you say that, I'll know you're a liar, but it'll be nice and it'll make me smile. All right? And that's what we need more of in this world. We need more people to make other people smile. I remember when I said that, that's a quote that I said I was, I think, 6 or 7, and I coined that phrase. So that's trademarked. Somebody is crying downstairs, and of course they're crying during the podcast hours. This is a weird podcast. This is a weird time to do a podcast for me. Like, it's Friday night. It's the only time I have to record. There's a motorcycle going by right now. This podcast is already off to a rough start. And I'll tell you more about that in a second. But the other thing I wanted to say about today's episode is go on to iTunes and leave that rating and review, whether it's good or bad. And also, go on to YouTube and go on to my YouTube videos. That motorcycle, man. I hope you guys can hear that. I don't know. That just really distracted me, but that's okay. We move forward and we soldier on. That's what we do here at Who Gives a Dram. I want you to go onto the YouTube videos, all right? It's already 2 minutes and 45 seconds into the show. I was hoping this would take 30 seconds. I want you to go into the YouTube videos, and instead of just pressing the like button on this podcast, I want you to give the like button a spinning heel kick and like this video, all right? I don't want you just to tap the like button. I want you to give it a spinning heel kick. I'm not asking much, just a spinning heel kick to the like button. And while you're at it, subscribe on YouTube as well. Takes 2 seconds. All right. So, I also wanted to say that this podcast is presented by The Grapevine Media. So go check us out over there, www.thegrapevinemedia.com. I was saying that this is a weird time for me to record. It's Friday night. It's the only time I have to record the podcast in the next few days, and I don't like to cut myself short on time, so I'd rather record it earlier than later. And, I've already recorded half of this episode. I was trying to figure out in my head how to say it correctly, but that's really the only way to say it. I've already recorded half of this episode, and basically what I was thinking was I was going off on a nice tangent, right? So I've been lifting. I was getting into what I've been drinking this week, and the answer was nothing because I've been kind of being strict about my diet a bit. Wanted to just take whiskey out of the equation for a little bit. I wanted to take alcohol in general out for the past week. While I'm really ramping up my repetitions in the gym during my workouts. And I was basically going into my arms are looking kind of big. You can call me Muscle Bob Buff Pants, which is SpongeBob when he got the inflatable muscle arms in an early episode. I know you've seen it. I know everyone's seen Muscle Bob Buff Pants. And as I was going off on a tangent on that, I realized that I record my videos on my phone because I'm poor and can't afford a camera. So I was thinking like midway through this tangent, like I don't think I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And what do you know? As soon as I think that, somebody called me. And I could hear it as I'm recording the podcast. And so I have to stop the podcast. I have to go to the phone. I have to just basically put it on Do Not Disturb. I don't even call the person back. I put it on Do Not Disturb. I try re-record, like I try picking up where I left off. Just didn't work. So I'm recording this again. I'm a little pissed off. But that's just the way it is. That's just how we're doing it. That's just what we're doing this week. And also this week, we've got some beautiful, beautiful Buffalo Trace Kosher Rye recipe bourbon. A bottle that is very difficult to get, that my brother found, that I stole from him because I'm the big brother and I can beat him up, to review on the podcast. And we're going to get into that. I've already poured it into the snoot glass, so it's already been kind of marinating in here. We're going to get to a review here in a little bit. But I do want to answer the quick questions about what I've been drinking. Nothing. What I've been smoking. Nothing. Like I said, I've been getting back into powerlifting this week. Or not this week, recently. This week I had a good week with lifting. And when you get into like a heavy workout mode, you just don't want to break the mindset of staying in that mode. So that's where I was this week. I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to go hard in the gym. So I really just want to go to work, go to the gym, eat clean, go to bed early. That's it. So that's what I did. Monday through Thursday. Today's Friday. I have a Jack and Jill for my cousin and his fiance to go to tomorrow, which I'm very much looking forward to. So I don't really have time tomorrow to record, and I just wanted to have plenty of time to make sure this gets out to you guys. So we're doing it on a Friday night. # late night podcast. And this is also the Muscle Bob Buff Pants episode because my arms are feeling a little juicy. Not to brag, but measured them 24 inches. I saw Shang-Chi. Saw it in the theaters last night. And gonna say this now, wasn't the biggest fan. Was kind of bored through most of the movie. And I'm disappointed in that because I love Marvel movies, obviously. They're MCU. Just was kind of bored. Some cool fight scenes. And I felt even more bad because one of my best friends is Asian and he loved it. And he said he cried during it. And so when he's telling me how much he loves this movie, how influential it is in the Asian culture, I was just so nervous to tell him that I thought it wasn't good. And I didn't want to come off as a bad friend. But William, I love you, man. Just thought it was boring. I don't know. I liked Black Widow more now that I think about it. And that's the first time I'm saying that out loud. But I did. I thought Black Widow was a bit more enjoyable. But not to like, I'm not going to spoil Shang-Chi right now, but it was a good movie. Like, I don't want to, if you're on the fence about whether you want to see it or not, I don't want you to think like, oh no, you shouldn't see it. You should see it. It is a good movie. But, have there been better MCU movies? Yeah, there have been. That's just the truth of it. Hey, did you guys check out last week's episode? Did you? Hold on a second. Sorry, had to pause the podcast for a second. Had some editing issues, so they should be good now. We should be good now, though. Gonna have to figure out how to edit that in the video. If you guys haven't checked out last week's podcast, you should. I sat down with Karthik and Matt from Phenomenal Spirits. We talked Rye 3 whiskey, which is one of my favorite rye whiskeys now. And I totally meant that, too. I wasn't just, saying that because they were on the show. It truly is one of my favorite rye whiskeys. Not only at the moment, but, I think it's one of the best ones I've had I mean, I'm not the biggest rye guy. You guys know this who listen to the podcast, who have been there since day one. I'm not the biggest rye whiskey person, but it must be the rum cask finish. It must have something to do with, how Matt is blending these three mash bills together. It's just one of my favorites, and I love it. So shout out to those guys over there. Again, was an honor to have them on the podcast. Their episode is going to be linked below, so make sure you check out my interview with them by following the link in the bio. So yeah, that's what we got. We also got Buffalo Trace Kosher Rye rye recipe bourbon to review today. Now, basically, this is a tough-to-get bottle. Shout out to Kale for finding it. And I'm assuming it's hard to get because it's kosher. It's got to be, it has to be distilled and made a certain way. So that's why I'm assuming that it's difficult to find, because the MSRP on this bottle is $40 to $50. It's 94%, I think. Or I'm sorry, 94 proof, 47%. Yeah, so it's not like it's coming at us with cask strength or something like that. I'm assuming that there's just limited quantities because of the kosher label. Now, when I first heard about this limited release, kosher recipe, I knew what kosher meant. I knew it had something to do with the Jewish religion. I'm not Jewish, and I'm not going to even try to go into what exactly kosher means because I don't want to sound ignorant and dumb. But I do know that it has significant meaning in the Jewish community, and that the whiskey needs to be released after Passover. So that's all I'm going to get into about what actually what kosher means. But when I first heard about this whiskey, obviously I wanted to find it. It's Buffalo Trace. Everyone loves Buffalo Trace, so I wanted to find it. I was curious. I thought maybe there was something different about the mash bill or something different about the whiskey, but I don't think there is. I think this is just essentially it's kosher certified. I don't know if there's anything different about the actual juice. The mash bill is undisclosed. It's a bourbon with a rye recipe, so that just means that the rye content is the second highest percentage in the mash bill behind the corn. And it just needs to be. I'll read it. I'll read it directly off the back of the bottle here. In partnership with the Chicago Rabbinical Council, Buffalo Trace Distillery produced this rye recipe bourbon whiskey. Made with the same high-quality grains as Buffalo Trace bourbon whiskey, this kosher spirit was aged in specifically designated kosher barrels. I don't know if there's a difference between the regular barrels that Buffalo Trace is using to age their spirits and the kosher certified. I would assume it would signify it if there was, and everything that I've read has not stated anything specific about the barrels, so I can only assume that there's nothing special about them. In order to satisfy Passover requirements, these barrels were sold to a non-Jewish executive in a ceremony witnessed by a representative from the CRC. After aging for 7 years, this rye recipe bourbon was bottled at 94 proof after ensuring the bottling lines were cleaned beforehand and that no contact was made by non-kosher spirits. Released after Passover each year, this rye recipe bourbon is bold and independent, celebrating its heritage from America's oldest continually operating distillery. The balanced taste of this rye recipe bourbon is smooth yet complex. Fantastic tasting notes, Buffalo Trace. Smooth yet complex. I never understood someone saying smooth, like how a whiskey is smooth. I mean, I know what it means. I understand what the person's trying to say, but now to me that just Like, does smooth mean there's no burn? Does smooth mean it like the viscosity of the actual liquid is smooth? Does smooth mean, it doesn't have any harsh taste, like it's very sweet? I don't know. I'm assuming most people means it has no burn, but I mean, to most people, I think most of us who are in the whiskey game like burn. No? Like, I like barrel-proof whiskeys, and there's totally a burn on barrel-proof whiskeys. So that's just my 2 cents about that. I don't really understand the concept behind smoothness. Besides, maybe what it means is that it just doesn't have a burn to it. But nevertheless, we'll get right into the smelling test here. See what we smell on this Buffalo Trace Kosher Rye recipe bourbon. And I'm not gonna lie, it smells a lot like Buffalo Trace. Yeah, it's fruity and sweet. A little bit of oak on there. It smells like It almost smells like a dialed up Buffalo Trace. And the Buffalo Trace is what I think they say it's between 8 and 10 years. This is 7 year. I'm getting the first thing that comes out to me is like berries and sweetness. Like a raspberry type sweetness to it. Like, a raspberry fruitiness, and then just like a vanilla sugar sweetness as well. Not much going on the nose. It's nothing overpowering. It's nothing overly complex. It smells delicious. It smells fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I think it smells like Buffalo Trace. I think it smells like Buffalo. I think it smells almost exactly like Buffalo. Now that I changed my camera angle, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, you can tell that, you can see my whiskeys now. You see my whiskey cabinet. I thought maybe that was a better backdrop than just an Irish flag. But you can still see the Irish flag, the infamous Irish flag that we talked about in probably the Proper 12 episode that released on St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, there's nothing overly impressive about the nose. I'm getting a lot of fruit and berry forward notes with some sugar, a little bit of oak. It's very nice. It's very well balanced. I guess that's the word I would put. Did they say that on here? No, they say smooth yet complex. It's a very well balanced nose. There's equal parts fruitiness, equal parts sugar, sugariness, but they come together nice. One doesn't overpower the other. Yeah, well, after that swirly poo right there, I'm getting more fruit. That's what I'm gonna say. It's basically like raspberry, vanilla, brown sugar, oak. And that's really it. Good nose, though. So, let's get right into the tasting. Let's get this thing reviewed. Let's see how it actually is. I will give you guys an honest review here. There's been a lot said about this Buffalo Trace Kosher Rye recipe. Let's see if it's worth hunting for. Let's see if it's worth going out of your way to try to find. So, cheers. Ooh, the rye spice comes out nice. That's really nice. Okay, it's a bit different on the palate than Buffalo Trace. That rye spice is really prevalent with a nice oak and a nice vanilla in there as well. That rye spice is more prevalent than I thought it was going to be. That is, you can tell that's a rye forward bourbon. Absolutely, 100%. That's really good. It's kind of stumping me a little bit because the rye spice is there and the typical bourbon notes are there, but I'm struggling to find anything else that is like of note. A little bit of leatherness, like a dark wood, maybe even like a toasted oak, a bit. I'm not really getting a whole lot of berries on the palate. It's more like smoked wood, like toasted oak. It's not smoky, but it's like burnt. But that rye spice is there. This is spicier than I thought it was going to be. That's for sure. Yeah, but I mean, this is just. I'm struggling. There's nothing like overpowering with it. There's nothing bad about it. There's just nothing that's like, wow, this thing's good. Like, wow, this is. I need to go search for this. You know. I don't want to say this is gimmicky, because I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing that Buffalo Trace is doing. But if I'm going to be honest, like, it's nothing that's going to knock your socks off. So disrespectful, smacking my lips into the mic. Yeah, no, I'm not getting anything like, all right. This is good. This is really good. And I'm happy that I have it, and if I saw it 10 times out of 10, I'm buying it. It's got a great rye forward spice, but what makes me really like it is the fact that all of those bourbon notes are very prevalent. The vanilla, there's a bit more of a toasted oak type of palate to it, maybe like a smoked wood. And it's got just those nice sweet notes, but the rye spice is definitely what's there the most. That's for sure what's there the most. Not a huge finish. It's 94 proof, so that's not expected. Nice mouthfeel, nothing too dry, nothing too oily, kind of just like right in the middle there. This would be a great daily sipper, I think, especially if you're a rye person. And even if you're a bourbon person. I mean, this is like this is well balanced. That's the best way I can describe this bourbon. It is perfectly balanced between the sweeter notes of bourbon and then also that rye forward spicy note. So I would assume that this is the rye recipe or mash bill number 1 from Buffalo Trace. One would assume, based on the smell, based on the taste, this is definitely not a wheater, obviously. Because there's kosher wheat. So that would make sense. But I'm kind of enjoying like that added spiciness. And like it's a 7 year, so it's not a young whiskey, but it's also not 10 year, 12 year range. So I don't think it's pulling as much from the barrel as say like an Eagle Rare, or even a Buffalo Trace, which is only a few years older. But so I don't think it's a barrel spice that I'm tasting. I think that's chalking up to that rye spice. I think this is a great product. But you know what we're gonna do? We are gonna see what our friends, just because they got a little bit of time left, over at Breaking Bourbon say about this. Let's see what they have to say. Buffalo Trace Kosher Rye. This is their 2020 release. I don't know if there's going to be a huge difference between 2020 and 2021. I would assume this is a 2021 release. I don't know how to tell. There's nowhere on the bottle that indicates it. It's an annual release, so I'm going to say they're probably pretty similar. They say on the nose you get raspberry, baking spice, leather, burnt caramel with a good intensity. I would agree with that. Yeah, that's a pretty good assessment, Breaking Bourbon. Palate is mixed berries, oak, and light citrus. I'm out with that. I get no berries. I get toasted oak. I get that sugariness, and that rye spice prevalent. Light citrus, no, not really. I get all those lighter notes more on the nose. It's heavier on the palate. Finish is rye spice, strawberry cream, seasoned oak, slightly dry, flourish of heat. Yeah, I get that seasoned oak or that toasted oak, whatever you want to call it. It's oaky on the palate more so. Yeah, I think that they're missing that leather note to it. I don't think they said that on there. Oh, they did on the nose. Yeah, a little bit of leather is in there as well. And by leather, when I think of leather, like the first thing that comes to my mind is either a baseball glove or the leather car fresheners that my dad always has hung up in his truck since I was a kid. So those, like, leather is more of a smell to me. I can't really taste leather yet, but to the smell, and that's partially due to the Knows Your Bourbon kit that I got from Chris. And if you haven't already, Chris has a new website for Knows Your Bourbon, so go check that out. Just Google Knows Your Bourbon. He's got a brand new website. Who Gives a Dram is featured on the As Seen On page on that. So if you want to check out my interview with Chris that we did a few months ago, me and him sat down. We talked about Knows Your Bourbon. We talked about where it came from. Go check that out. It was a great episode, and Chris is a fantastic guy. And he sent me a Knows Your Bourbon kit, and I actually am able to pick up leather notes better now in bourbons than I was before, thanks to his kit, because I've used it a bunch. So shout out to Chris. But yeah, I get that more on the nose. That leather that breaking our friends over at Breaking Bourbon say. I say our friends over at Breaking Bourbon like they have any idea who I am, because they don't. I still feel bad for absolutely just shitting on them when me and Kale did Colonel H. Taylor. When they said that they tasted warm multi-grain bread. Oh, that still gets me blood red mad. But overall, you guys, if I'm gonna give this a rating, I don't see where they're getting citrus on the palate. I really don't. This is a great rye forward bourbon whiskey. If this was readily available, I would buy this 10 times out of 10 for $40 to $50. This is up there with great bottles at that price. But you can never find it, so that's got to affect the score. And it just has to. It's got a great color. It's got a great MSRP. It's from a great distillery. It's got a great nose, a great palate, a great finish. It's a very, very much above average whiskey. This is, and just this, the kosher isn't a gimmick, you guys. This is a solid product, but you can't find it. So because of the fact you can't find it, I'm gonna give this an 8.4. If you could find this, might be flirting with 9. At least 8.7. You're flirting upper 8s, but because you can't find it, you got to bring it down. I don't want to give it in the 7s because it's not a 7s. 7s to me is something that I wouldn't choose to grab most of the time. I would choose to grab this a bunch. I don't remember. I think I've given some whiskey 7s in the past that I shouldn't have, but we grow with the show. I'm growing with the show. Maybe we need to revisit whiskeys again. But what I say, 8.4? I think it's a fair score. Buffalo Trace Kosher Rye Recipe Bourbon. In the books. Episode 43. In the books. Just remembering. Didn't do an athlete. Number 43. Best number 43 of all time, in my opinion. Troy Polamalu. Defensive back on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Beautiful hair. Great player. But that's it. That's it, you guys. That's what we got this week on the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys either listening or watching to the show. Make sure you're subscribed on all platforms, you guys. so you never miss an episode. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Breaker, Overcast, Buzzsprout, Podbean, Podcast Addict, Google Podcasts, Pandora. All of those sites Who Gives a Dram is available on. So just make sure you're subscribed. Like I said, leave a rating and review on iTunes and go give that YouTube like button a spinning heel kick for me. And tell a friend about Who Gives a Dram. Let's keep this thing growing. But I got to go drink some more whiskey. I think I'm going to go get a cigar and light up a cigar tonight to celebrate the Labor Day weekend. You guys have a fantastic rest of your week. Let's get through the rest of the week. It's almost Friday. When this episode drops. So let's get through the rest of the week, and then we have another weekend. So I'm going to let Nick Bossy play me out again. What Happened to Country, available everywhere to stream. And you guys, whiskey is the water of life. So let's start living.
My hands are tired from paying my bills, staring at a bottle, I'm aiming to kill. Weeks passing by and the seasons keep changing. I'm playing my song, trying to make me a name. People say as they walk out the bar, the kid's gone places, maybe even a star. They don't play country down in Nashville today, just the same chord progression with nothing to say. What happened to country? 3 chords and the truth. And who's gonna step up and fill their big shoes, writing songs about outlaws, singing all night, and songs that'll make a grown man cry. They use auto-tune now down on Music Row, 'cause true country died there a long time ago. No, they don't play Waylon on the boulevard, but they'll do anything to be rock stars. What happened to country? 3 chords and the truth. And who's gonna step up and fill their big shoes, writing songs about outlaws, singing all night, and songs that'll make a grown man cry. I do believe there is hope for us yet, 'cause there's millions of people who cannot forget the way Johnny Cash brought a tear to their eyes, or how Marty Robbins painted Texas skies. What happened to country? 3 chords and the truth. And who's gonna step up and fill their big shoes, writing songs about outlaws, singing all night, and songs that'll make a grown man cry. A grown man cry. A grown man cry. I won't let country die.